Next, we're going to have Becky moderate a student panel. I've put the panelists in the chat. And if you were placed in an internship last spring or you were looking for an internship in the summer of 2020, most likely you heard about rumors about how employers shortened, modified, or canceled internships as a result of the pandemic. So in this panel, we wanted to have inspiring profiles of students who achieved success in finding opportunities and wanted to have them share with you the strategies that they found most helpful in retaining an internship and how they were able to make the most out of their experience. So Becky, I'm going to have you start the panel.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And huge welcome to Rachel, Cole, and Trevor for joining me. For everyone who's on the Zoom, I have a few questions that I'm going to ask each of these three amazing panelists, and then we're going to make sure we leave some time at the end. What I would encourage you to do is if you have a question, put it in the chat in the middle, and we'll get to it when we get through some of the prepared questions, or feel free to raise your hand given the small size of this group, and we can take you off mute and make sure that you get a chance to ask your question. Before we dive into the questions themselves, I'd love to start with Rachel and then go to Cole and to Trevor. Just give us a sense of what you did for your internship experience at a high level, and then we can dive into a little bit of the follow-up questions. Sound good? Great. Rachel, you want to kick us off?
Sure. And just a quick note in the chat, I'm actually still class of 2021. So I'm still in school, still a student.
Sorry about that.
No worries at all. So talking specifically about the internship that I did last summer during COVID, I was a research intern at a company called Intellix. And they do global trade and supply chain logistics, which is not at all my area of particular expertise. But I did research on a variety of topics for them, helped support them on a project they were working on in the Philippines to help the Philippines comply with UN Security Council Resolution 1540, and then also help them look for new opportunities, kind of researching events that were happening in the news or other things that were shaping the landscape that Intellix works in.
Thanks. Cole, over to you.
Hi. A recent experience I just finished was being the Tufts Film and Media Department has something called a Internship. And so during January, I was at GDH in Boston remotely in the Children's Media Department. And so I met with some producers on Arthur, and it was kind of a series of informational interviews, which led to me and a group of 3 other students completing a series of independent projects, like where we got to create some characters, write a treatment for an episode, and then we kind of made those connections and we're still kind of in touch with each other and then the producers. So it was just like a good introduction into that kind of world.
So I'm Trevor. I guess I had 2 sort of pandemic internship experiences. The first was when I was in the spring as an intern. I was a studio operations broadcast associate for Nessun. So I was basically learning to mix on a soundboard for our studio show games, learn how to set up the audio network, troubleshoot things. Halfway through the middle of my experience, COVID shut everything down, and I had to transition to an environment in which I was not physically using a console and learning in person, and actually had to complete a variety of different tasks. So I got a certification. I put together a music playlist for the company. And then this past January, I was also a wintern where I was with Smarty Pants Pictures, which is a film production company in New York City. It was all remote. And as a development intern, my job was essentially to do research on people and stories for upcoming projects in variety of stages of development.
Great, thanks to all 3 of you. So I want to definitely talk about how the pandemic impacted your internship experience. But first, I want to take a little step back to what brought you to those internship experiences. Can you talk a little bit about what types of preparation you did and what resources were available to you that you used to help you find your internships? And maybe we can go the kind of opposite direction. So let's start with Trevor, Cole, and then Rachel.
I was, I thought I was muted, but I was unmuted. So I guess for the Nesson internship, I essentially, I had a previous internship at CBS Sports, and I was talking to my boss, and he was essentially telling me that he knew someone at Nesson, and then I reached out to that person. We got set up, we talked, and then I applied for this studio operations broadcast associate position. So I guess the one thing is that I would say with that is connections are really important. And for the Winternship, I subscribe to the FMS newsletter. I regularly follow the Winternship program. I applied for it last year. I didn't get in. And when I saw that the Winternship opportunities were available, I looked it up. I essentially like did a deep dive into which companies I'd want to do. I wanted to do something with the most work, the most hours, just so I can have a lot of experience during the month of January. And I essentially just attached my regular resume and wrote sort of like a cover letter, essentially trying to tie my previous experience, which was mostly in sports, to something that wasn't sports. So, you know, applying different skills, research skills from sports into research skills for development. And then I sent it in and I got the position.
I will say that I followed a similar path to Trevor with the internship application, but I'll also add on is that it didn't hurt that 2-3 months prior, I reached out to the producer on Arthur, Deb Frank, is a Tufts alum. So like 3 months earlier, I reached out to her on LinkedIn for an informational. And so it didn't hurt that 3 months later, when we were working together, she already knew me from our phone call. So I think reaching out to Tufts alumni is just so important in what I'm like doing constantly right now.
Yeah, so I think I did a few different things last spring to search for an internship for this past summer. I used the Tisch Summer Fellowship Program to apply for opportunities. I was a Tisch Summer Fellow the summer before, so I was familiar with their process. And I think sort of right in the middle of that application process, there were a lot of delays because it was happening right while everything was closing down and internship programs were changing. So I was kind of stalled in my application process there. I used Handshake a lot to search opportunities that seemed interesting to me. And then I also, specifically for the internship that I ended up doing this past summer, I used the Jumbos for Jumbos program, which I believe the Career Center set up to allow Tufts alumni to connect current Tufts students to potential internship opportunities or other volunteer or project-based opportunities in light of the fact that so many programs, internship programs, were being canceled because of the pandemic. So I don't think I did a whole lot of networking last spring to prepare for the summer, which is something I'm learning a lot more about now. I think is always beneficial, but I definitely benefited from the fact that Tufts has programs set up to help students get connected with internships, and that Tufts alum were very interested in helping Tufts students during that time. And so I think the biggest thing I worked on was learning how to write cover letters a little bit quicker and just get as many applications out there as I could.
One of the things I'm hearing from all three of you is that networking and communication is so, so important, even more so in this virtual world where you're doing it all over email or LinkedIn messages. And it sounds like you all had some learnings throughout that experience of kind of networking and developing. Could you talk a little bit more about what those learnings are and how to network, how to reach out, how to differentiate yourself so that you do get a response from someone that you're reaching out to, whether it's about an internship or just getting to know them better?
I will say that what's helped me is actually usually I'll just use the Career Center site. It was a lovely the Career Center packet full of like simple messages, and I don't copy and paste because that would be, because I'm sure like that would be very, very like stale. But I try to just like easily get to the point of like why I'm reaching out to this person, who I am, because so just so they know that like it's not just like this amorphous picture of a person reaching out to them. And then also just like trying to be respectful and just saying like, it's okay, thank you so much for considering my request. just trying to be direct and as quick as possible has been like the most fruitful. And also weirdly, like waiting for just like sending messages and then sometimes like 3 months later getting a response is the best surprise, guys, because since people are so busy right now, even it might not seem like it, it's easier for things to get lost. So I try to just like let things go.
Yeah, I guess I can hop in now. I think that the thing is with networking is it can come in, there's no real one strategy because it can come in all different sorts of places. I remember my first connection to CBS Sports actually was my mom was on jury duty with someone she used to work with. And then that coworker had like his wife was a Tufts alum who also worked at CBS. And it's just like those sorts of connections kind of can pop up anywhere. I guess one of the things that I also use the Career Center, just like Cole, I think it's a really great resource, specifically Ryan Smith, I go to a lot in the arts communication media position. Sometimes he'll suggest people for me to look out for. I'll also look on LinkedIn to see, if there's a Tufts alum working in sports that I'm interested in. One of the best actually, or one of the best ways that I'd say to find out who to talk to more is after you make those initial connections and you have an informational interview. One of the best questions to ask in an informational interview is, do you know anyone else that would be great for me to talk to or that I could learn from? And if they throw out another couple of names, make sure to reach out to those people within the next week, because, it's sort of like a chain. One thing often leads to another. And so, you want to be in a position where you're constantly networking, you have names ready that you want to contact so that you can spend less time looking for names of people who you'd like to contact. Although that's also a very fruitful activity, and more time really sending those messages and working on your process for sending them is kind of like a cover letter too.
Yeah, I would say my experience with networking is still very much a work in progress. And like I mentioned, for my internship last summer, I didn't do a whole lot of the networking that Trevor and Cole are talking about, but I benefited greatly from the built-in Tufts network. And I think the way that alum feel about helping Tufts students, I benefited greatly from. And these programs, again, that Tufts has set up that I would just totally recommend, looking into and using. I will say now, as I start my job search for when I graduate in May, I have been trying to work on this networking question. And I think, a lot of things similar to what Cole and Trevor said, I'm learning that you can go on LinkedIn and search Tufts alum and search Tufts alum who work at companies that you're interested at. And message them and see if they reply. And also just sort of thinking through all of the experiences that I've had in the past 4 years, and even, dipping back into high school and the people I've met and who might it be useful to, reach back out to and have a 30-minute conversation with at this point in my job search stage. And again, I think professors, my advisor has been helpful in connecting me to people. The Career Center, I know, is an excellent resource in learning as I'm learning how to network. And so I think it's certainly a process. And for me, it's difficult, it's challenging. I don't love reaching out to people and asking them for their time, but I think I'm learning more and more how to do that.
Great, thanks to all of you. And I think the importance of networking, the importance of persistence is really important. And also, I think one of the things I loved is being really specific. So Cole called out, like, acknowledge that, hey, I'm reaching out to you as a fellow Tufts alum, or I'm reaching out to you as a fellow Tufts alum who is interested in the media space. And that connection in a world where the people you're reaching out to probably get a lot of LinkedIn messages really helps to differentiate it. Great. So let's switch gears a little bit. You went through the process of finding the internship and networking and all of that. Now you're in the internship in the middle of a pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about how the pandemic impacted your internship experience, and what was a little surprising or different that you had to adapt to?
I think, Becky, like you touched on sort of the work-life balance. I had worked an internship the summer before where I worked 9 to 6 in a physical office. And so at 6 p.m., everybody went home and that was it. But for me this summer, it was really figuring out, how am I going to work best from my little desk in my bedroom, in my off-campus apartment, what is going to work for me? And right, how do I set those boundaries of like, this is when I can start working, and then eventually, I know some days there might be a project that there's a deadline that I need to work on, but otherwise, I can only do so much work every day. I need to take time to do other things that are important to me, like going outside, going for a walk, spending time with friends. So I think that was one of the big lessons. I also think your point about communication is so key, and working on, being able to just write emails and talk to people on Zoom calls or over the phone, and being really clear about what the expectations for a project were, what somebody needed to get done, what was the outcome they were hoping for, so that I could effectively then do that project for them. And then I think specifically some of the projects I was working on, I was learning how to make meeting agendas for these meetings with this government agency in the Philippines, which was really cool and something I had never gotten to do before. Sharpening my PowerPoint making skills for those same meetings, learning a little bit more about applying for government grants, just sort of all these new topics that I didn't know a lot about, that I got to learn a lot about this summer by just digging into projects on them.
Yeah, I guess I'll add on to what Rachel said about work-life balance. I think the thing that surprised me when I was working on my internship this past January is essentially how the day and never really ends, especially for a company that I was at. That was it's like a small film production company, so everyone's working around the clock. So I think one of the things that I tried to do once I realized, wow, I'm not really feeling as productive as I need to be, is I went in my calendar, and when I like wrote down, when I did the big block of time, I just like wrote down a little schedule where I was like, okay, 10 to 11:30, I'm doing this project. 11:30 to 12, I'm doing this. 1, I'm doing lunch, et cetera, and so on. And I think that like at least regimenting that was really helpful for me. I think also the communication thing is so key, because you're not really seeing these people in person, and when you talk in a Zoom meeting, you got to be quick, or just not interrupt people. I still haven't figured that part out, but it's I think that being in constant communication, asking, like, not being afraid to ask clarifying questions, so that you don't spend an hour on something and then realize that, oh no, I've done the wrong thing, is really important, and also it helps to build that rapport that you wouldn't be getting in person. So I'd say that, and I guess my final point is, I actually had the experience of having my internship just completely changed the middle because of everything that happened in March and all the sports leagues getting shut down. And there weren't many projects for me to do. I'm sure, things are a little more segmented, and there's a bit more of an agenda. But I think one of the things I tried to do that really helped is, like, if I don't have work, I'm going to ask for work. And if I have some, like, a little bit of work, I'll ask for more work so that I can do that work after the work. And like I ended up getting like a certification, and they let me do like the songs for the Red Sox, which was really cool. And I never would have gotten that work if I didn't ask. So yeah.
Cole, anything on your end?
I mean, just sometimes I think like I think just echoing what everyone said of like asking for asking for opportunities. I'm currently in an internship right now that recently, like I asked to talk with people that I wasn't regularly meeting with because I have a direct supervisor, but then other than that, it's at a literary agency, and there's like writers they represent, and I was like, can I talk to one of the writers, because like since I'm not in a building with them, I wouldn't get to like run into them. And they were, and my boss was so willing to connect me with one of them, which is great. But I think asking for what you want is like so much harder and so much more necessary now, because like I wouldn't have gotten it, because like there's things that I don't even know I'm missing, because all I have is my screen and I don't have like the full office.
Thanks to all three of you. I have a couple more questions and then I'm happy to open it up to the group. So two more questions for me. One is, so one thing that was clear that you all talked about is this notion of there's no start or end to the day. And I talked about that a little bit earlier. And I think everyone is feeling that. How did you all set boundaries, find balance? What was like the things that were non-negotiables for you so that you didn't feel like you were working around the clock? I guess to put it differently, how did you take a break throughout the day?
I would say not throughout the day, but I would end my day by getting up, leaving my house, and going for an hour and a half walk to Mystic Lake. And it was amazing. And I would use that time to listen to podcasts, to listen to music, to call my family or friends that I hadn't talked to in a bit. And I think that was how I marked the end of my day. Sometimes on those walks, I would still get a phone call from somebody at work, but I would say, I'm out of the office now, and I can do that when I get back to my desk, tomorrow. Or if it was really urgent, I could do it that evening if it was something time sensitive. But I think for me, that walk was maybe the one thing that I got pretty good at doing to end my day. I think, again, I was still working on finding that balance even at the end of the summer. I think maybe during the day I would get up and I would make lunch in the middle of the day. So that was a break I took. I needed to eat and I would, spend a little bit of time away from my computer. So that was good as well.
Yeah, I'll just echo leaving your house because that was very helpful to me in creating a break. And then also like thinking about the fact that I'm currently at home with my parents. And so there's confined spaces. And so trying to figure out, okay, can I work in the basement today? Or am I just like going to be stuck in my room? Okay, well then let me like go outside later and try to break up like physically where I am.
Yeah, I guess I'll agree with everything that everyone else said, but I'd also say that personally, I did have some trouble with this. Lunch was a good break, but other than that, it was pretty straightforward day, and it's definitely strange when you're doing work and no one's around you, but you have to kind of imagine the whole office, working on stuff as well. I guess I also like staying focused for 8 hours a day is pretty hard, but I told myself, okay, like if I like I'll take breaks and then I'll add that break on to the end of the day. And then at 7:30, I'm just done. I'm gonna answer all the communications as if I'm like I'll answer like a couple of texts, but after that, I'll just make sure to like make it known to the people that I'm working with that like I am going to dinner and then I am going to be doing, my own just that's like the end of the day for me because I feel like as long you need to be not clear because that could come off as a little brazen, but implicitly clear that when your day starts and ends, sending those check-in messages is good too. But yeah, I kind of wish I had gone with the walk idea during January. That sounds fun.
I will say yesterday was, I think you're in the Boston area still, it was like the first day that actually felt like spring was close, right? And so I looked outside, it was, maybe 2 o'clock. I texted my husband who works at a small business a couple miles down the road. And I said, can you leave early? We got to go for a walk. And it felt so good to get outside because when you're just inside in the same kind of like 2x2 space all day, just getting that movement and that fresh air is so important for your mental health. Okay, last question for me, and then we'll open it up to any questions in the group. If you had one piece of advice for fellow students who might be feeling intimidated by the process of finding an internship, stalled in the process, I don't know where to go next, what would that piece of advice be?
I'll go first, I guess. It's kind of like a 2-for-1, but it's the same sentiment. I'd say the most important thing is do not get in your own head, because I will say I wish I could burn LinkedIn to the ground because I'll open up LinkedIn to look for a job opportunity, and you'll see the feeds, the first thing you see. And the first thing you see is everyone you know getting jobs. And you're like, dang, I don't have a job. It's important to just maybe like look at the first one or two, but just not look at it any further past that. Because, you know, I think that like, especially not being able to be in person and see people, and the fact that there's so many more opportunities out there, you feel like you have to be working at a formal place every second of every day. I know I feel that definitely, but there's ways that you can like you can do personal projects. You can you know, working for your family and working at home is also important. Doing your schoolwork, doing your classes, making sure that your resume and your cover letter is important. At the end of the day, like, you are the one trying to get the internship, and the fact that other people have stuff is not, it's not contingent on you. And especially I think just getting out of that mindset is really important. I will say that although like having an internship and making sure that you're doing stuff during a pandemic is important, it's also one of the most, you know, disastrous times in the last couple decades, or at least in the last century. And it's dragged on everyone. And adding to that just general stress of living through a pandemic with also the general stress of a job search, it's pretty like crushing. So I'd say that at some point, just step away, don't look at the internet, just make a schedule of what you're going to do that day, and just keep focused on yourself.
Love that. Thanks, Trevor. Cole, Rachel, any advice on your end?
Yeah, I would just echo, I would definitely echo that. That like LinkedIn is terrible, but also so important. And something I like, just like staying curious, I think was really helpful for me when I was looking for things. Like, this is so TV specific, and I'm sorry if you're like a programmer, but like I would like start looking up like the production companies behind things I like, and then like start seeing like, oh, do they have any job openings? But I maybe that's applicable to you if you really love a UN resolution. I don't know, but like staying curious about like where where things came from, who's doing the things you like, can they talk to you? That's been helpful to me at the very least.
Yeah, I appreciate both of those points. Certainly, Trevor's about taking care of yourself through this process is so important. And Cole, too, I like how you talked about staying curious. And, you know, I think that kind of touches on my point maybe that I would make, which is, and I think I actually heard this on a career panel, a career center panel, maybe back in March or April, is to think about, you know, why you want this internship opportunity. Maybe, you know, with the job search, it's a little bit different. But when you're thinking about kind of gaining experience, like what do you want out of that experience? And does it need to be a conventional internship? Or are there other ways to gain that experience? I know, and again, I love all the resources that Tufts has. I think as a senior, I'm just starting to understand all of the things that are at my fingertips as a Tufts student. And so I'd certainly just encourage anyone to kind of investigate all of those things. But I think it was Tisch College put out Tufts Civic Impact, which was an opportunity to find volunteer opportunities during the pandemic. I found one and did one while I was in quarantine, and it was really meaningful and useful to me. And so I think, you know, there are volunteer opportunities, there are class projects you can dive into. You can just, you know, learn about something because you're, like Cole said, you're curious about it. And so I think, you know, there are lots of other ways if you're finding that you're getting kind of stuck in this internship search process to still, you know, gain the skills or experience that you're looking for.
Great. Thanks to all three of you. I think the importance of taking care of yourself, being curious, all really, really important. We have a few more minutes, and so I want to open it up to any questions from folks on the Zoom. So feel free to put it in the chat, come off mute, and turn your camera on so we can hear you as you ask your question. Eager to hear what's on all of your minds, and our panelists are ready to answer.
No question is too small. I also wanted just to read thank you, Becky. I wanted to read what Becky wrote in the chat if people didn't get to see it when we were talking about LinkedIn. Becky simply put one of her favorite quotes and one of mine as well: comparison is the thief of joy. So really think about that, as you're looking at people's handshake profiles, as you're looking at people's LinkedIns. Everybody has different experiences and they come at different times during our lives. So just keep that in mind. Network, talk to people and use your conversations with people and this panel and, anything you learned today as like learning experiences. Like what can you learn from their experience that will be helpful to you in your search? And I think another thing that came up in the panel is the importance of like taking a break. Sometimes you have to just walk away and then come back. A lot of times people feel like, okay, I'm going to sit down in front of the computer and I'm going to do my internship search in one day and that's going to be it. And I'm apply to some things and then I'll wait and I'll hear back. But, Becky can kind of comment on this too, like employers are posting things, ongoing. So the time that you're looking, you might find 2 or 3 things that really speak to you, but maybe it makes sense to take a break and come back because maybe, the thing that you get eventually was in the process and not posted. The other thing too is that you will be applying to things that you see, but there will also be things that you'll hear of because you've been talking to people and they can hear about your experience. As a final comment, Becky, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, Malika. I think you have to it's a bit of a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think give yourself small goals every single day. Don't sit down and say, I am going to tackle the world and find my internship and I'll be done. And it's only Friday at 1:30. Make sure you give yourself some small goals. Today, I am going to send 5 LinkedIn messages. Today, I am going to research 2 companies that I am really excited about. And set those goals for yourself every single day. And then you're going to get to the end of the week and find this whole host of work that you did. And then you're going to see the benefits of that coming in over the following days, weeks, or even in some cases, months. If you get surprise LinkedIn messages with Cole, I have totally done before. And I appreciate you enjoying that when it's a bit of a surprise.
It really is quite the joy, actually, to be like, oh, I am a person. This is great.